Day 498 of doing a LeetCode problem every day until I get a job. All right, y'all, we're back again another day, another LeetCode problem where we're doing daily LeetCode problems. And today we have question number 3541. Find the most frequent vowel and consonant. The difficulty level is easy, so you already know we're going to keep the solution as simple and easy to understand as well. But before we get started, y'all, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And if you need any new Apple AirPods, go ahead and check out that link in the description so you can get you some. Now let's see what the question says. You are given a string S consisting of lowercase English letters A to Z. Your task is to find the vowel, one of A, E, I, O, or U with the maximum frequency, and find the consonant of all letters excluding vowels with the maximum frequency. Return the sum of the two frequencies. Note, if multiple vowels or consonants have the same maximum frequency, you may choose any one of them. If there are no vowels or no consonants in the string, consider their frequency as 0. The frequency of a letter X is the number of times it occurs in a string. All right, y'all, so that may seem a little bit confusing at first. So let's go ahead and take a look at these examples just to make sure that we are doing this problem correctly. So in example 1, we have our input S equals successes. Our output is 6. Explanation says the vowels are U, which has a frequency of 1, E, which has a frequency of 2. The maximum frequency is 2. The consonants are S, which has a frequency of 4, C has a frequency of 2, so the maximum frequency is 4. Thus, the output is 2 plus 4, which equals 6. So, let's go ahead and break this down one step further just in case people are still a little bit confused. What we want to do is count the number of vowels. Boom. So we have a U, an E, and an E. We want to see, since we have two vowels, we want to see which vowel occurs more than one, or not more than once. We want to see which vowel occurs the most, right? So in this case, U occurs one time. That's why when they say frequency, it has a frequency of 1 because it only occurs one time. And then E right here occurs 2 times. Boom, boom. So E has a frequency of 2. So since E occurs more times than U, that means E is the maximum frequency that we're going to use, which has a frequency of 2. Now that's just the vowels. Now we have to do the consonants. So now with the consonants, we have S. S occurs 4 times, right? So S has a count of 4. Boom. C occurs 2 times. Boom, right here. So in this case, S for the constants, for the consonants, S has the maximum frequency. S occurs more than C. S has a frequency of 4, meaning it occurs 4 times. So since S is the consonant that occurs the most amount of times, that's the consonant that we are going to use when we add the most vowels plus the most consonants, right? So there are 2 vowels. That's the most vowels. The most vowels had a frequency of 2, or the most vowels occurred 2 times. And then the most consonants had a frequency of 4, or the most consonant appeared 4 times. So that's why we do 2 plus 4, because those are the vowels in the consonant that occurred the most amount of times. When we add those two together, we get 6, and that's why output is 6. So just in case that didn't make sense to y'all, let's take a look at example 2. So in example 2, we have a string S, which in this case is all vowels A, E, I, A, E, I, A. This time the output is 3. Explanation says the vowels are A, which has a frequency of 3, E has a frequency of 2, and I has a frequency of 2. Since A occurs the most times, the maximum frequency is 3 because A occurred 3 times, everything else occurred twice. So then it says there are no consonants in S, hence the maximum consonants frequency is 0. So 3 plus 0 is 3, and that's why we return 3. Because remember, it says right here, if there are no vowels or no consonants in the string, consider their frequency 0. So that's what happened in this example. There were 0 consonants, so we just add the frequency of 3, or the vowel that had the highest frequency, which in this case was 3, or the highest occurrence, which in this case was 3. We just add 3 to 0, and thus our output is 3. So I hope that makes sense to y'all. And now that we understand the question, let's get into the fun part, the actual solution. Solution is not that difficult at all. So let's get into it. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do is, since we're going to want to iterate through S, which is right now, S is a string. Well, since we want to iterate through that and check each character, we're going to have to turn it into an array. So we can say let char equal an array, open up the parentheses S. So now we have S stored as an array in char. Boom. Then we need to create a dictionary. As I'm sure y'all already assume, we're going to be using the hash maps or dictionaries to solve this problem, because that's going to allow us to keep track of the frequency or the occurrence of each letter in the string S that they give us in the input string. So we're going to declare a variable. We could call it vowel F for vowel frequency. We're going to say colon. It's going to be a dictionary of character colon int. So this character is going to be whatever letter we're on, and this int is going to be what keeps count of that letter. So this is the key, and this is character is the key, and then int will be the value, and we could just initialize it with a blank array to start. And then now we need to do the same thing for the consonant. So we could declare another variable called cons f, say colon is going to be the same thing, a dictionary of character colon int. We're going to set that equal, initialize it with a blank dictionary like so. Boom. Then now we need to store all our vowels. So we let the compiler know what the vowels are. So we're going to say let vowel colon. It's going to be an array of character. We're going to set that equal to an array. So now we need to initialize it with the vowels. So we're going to say quotation marks A, come outside of that, comma, quotation marks E, do the same thing for, say, comma, and do the same thing for I. Then we're going to say comma, do the same thing for O. Sorry, y'all, it should be in the quotation marks. Same thing for O, come outside of that, and then we're going to do the same thing for U. So now we have all our vowels, and we let the compiler know what the vowels are. Now we're going to come right here, and we're going to iterate through S, or char, our char array. So we're going to say for I in char, we're going to open up the brackets, and we're going to say if vowel dot contains, open up the parentheses I. So if I ends up being a vowel, then we need to increment our count of this dictionary, right? So we need to store what I is as the character and increment the count. So we're going to say, so if that happens, we're going to say vowel F, because we're working with this dictionary, our vowel F dictionary, not to get confused with this vowel, we're doing vowel F. So we're saying vowel F, square bracket I, comma, default colon 0, come outside of that, plus equals 1. So every time we see I, or whatever character that is, whatever character it may be, whenever we see that character, we're going to keep count over here. We're going to start the count from 0, and each time we see it, we're going to add 1 to this default value that is currently 0. So that's how we're going to keep count. Each time we see the character, we're going to add 1 to the count, so that's going to keep count for us. And that's going to keep count of the vowels. Now we need to do the same thing for the consonant. So we could just say else, because if it's not a vowel, that means it's a consonant. So we could say else, we're going to increment our cons F dictionary. So we're going to say cons F, open up the square brackets I, comma, default colon 0, and then we're going to come outside, do the same thing, plus equals 1. Now we're going to come underneath this, and now that we after this finishes, now we'll have our count of each of each letter, and we'll have a dictionary of each letter that keeps count of each letter. Now we need to return the max of each vowel and each consonant. So we're going to say let max vowel, we're going to set that equal to vowel F dot values, because remember, And when we're dealing with dictionaries, this is the key and this is the value. So we want whichever has the highest value, right? So this is going to check vowel F and see what has the highest values, or not yet. Now this is how it's going to check for the max values when we say dot max and put the parentheses. Now this is going to find which dictionary in vowel F, which vowel F dictionary has the highest value. And it's going to be optional, so we need to unwrap it. We could just have a default value 0 like that. Now we need to do the same thing for the consonants. So we're going to say let max cons equal cons F. Sorry, dot values. So once again, this is going to get the values. Then we're going to get the max value by saying dot max. And then once again, unwrap it like that. Then all we have to do is say return max val plus max cons. And that should be all she wrote, y'all. Let's go ahead and give it a run before we submit it, because we all know how this LeetCode stuff can be. And look, we have an error already. So let's see. Sorry, that should be an S after values. Let's run it again. Run it. Let's see. And it's accepted. So now let's go ahead and submit it. Make sure it's still accepted. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, that timing is terrible, y'all. But this is a very simple and easy solution to understand. That's why I wanted to use this solution. We got 4 milliseconds, beats 14.29% of users. This is a very basic solution, but it's a solution that we can all learn from, and hopefully we can use the knowledge that we learn from this solution on future solutions, right? All it is it's a very basic example of how to use dictionaries and how dictionaries work and how we can use those to solve our LeetCode problems. So I hope that makes sense to y'all. I hope y'all learned something today. And with that being said, I hope to see y'all here tomorrow for another day, another LeetCode problem. See y'all then.